So what we're talking about today.
So what I was thinking that perhaps we could talk about, if it's agreeable with you, is how you despise yourself and the actions around despising yourself. So, what I mean by that is, your eating disorder, which is the things that you do. So we say that I have an eating disorder, or I have OCD, or I have. Well, you don't have it because you can't show it to me.
Mm-hmm.
You do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do this, and I do this, and I do this. There's a reason why you do it. There's a reason where it came from, but you don't have it. No one actually, you can't go and buy it from a shop. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's my interpretation of it. Anyway, people have different ones, and that's okay. So, but ultimately, it's self-harm and despising yourself. So I just want to talk about, or you pick one of those, how you despise yourself, and what benefit that you gain from despising yourself in that way.
Okay. I guess some of the ways that I demonstrate that I don't like myself are like how you've given examples of like an eating disorder and that kind of thing. And I guess I don't generally link them with that it's coming from like a self-hatred point of view. The things that stick out in my mind are stuff like the feelings of disgust I get when I like look in a mirror, which has been quite in my mind this last week or so, because I did the video which is going to be played in GP surgeries and got that back and what do you want to have a look at it? Is there any editing you want? And I just couldn't bear. I just saw a clip of myself, a still, and I couldn't even bear to look at it. So it's like, no, do whatever you want. I'm not. I don't regret anything I said. I'm happy with what I shared and what I said. Edit it how you want. I don't want to look or check it because I couldn't bear it.
Can you see that in how you're despising yourself? I couldn't bear to look at me, because when I look at myself in the mirror, you're very critical of yourself. So, when you're born, when a baby's born, it loves, absolutely adores itself. Everything is love when the baby's born. Its microbiomes are happy, it's fresh, it's new, and it loves itself. So it plays with little fingers and little toes and just has a beautiful smile on its face the majority of the time. And so you weren't born to do that. So it's from what you've learned from the people around you, from our experiences and what we hear people say, and our trait in society. And the society starts from the home and then school, and then, the society set that teaches us to dislike ourselves in some way, based on watching other people or what comes out of, their vessel, their mouth. So for you, you have this self-loathing that I can't look at myself.
Oh, I hate looking in the mirror. To be fair, in my bedroom, it's one wall's a mirror, and it's always been, because that's what it was like when I moved in. It's the front of the wardrobe, and it's surprising how I don't even notice it's a mirror. I've blanked it out in my mind.
Do you mean, so that blanks you out?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only time that, like I say, when that video, it was a surprise to say, oh, is that what I look like? That's disgusting.
What
or
is it
sound.
So tell me about that. What's disgusting about the way that you look?
I had it on a Teams call yesterday because it was close up, because I had it on my phone, and I'm like, it's disgusting. I just can't bear to look at myself. It's so ugly. I sound awful. I look horrible. And this isn't a new thing. I can remember, I know I probably didn't even register it as much when I was younger, but when I was a kid, like on family holidays and things like that, I didn't want my photograph taken because you'd always get it wasn't like phone now, you'd always get a pile from the photography shop and this, that, and other, and have to sit through them. So like there was a lot of time, a lot of years where I refused to have my photograph taken as a child and growing up.
What was wrong with you? What was it?
Oh, I couldn't bear it. I don't know.
What is it that you couldn't bear?
See me and how like disgusted with myself I were and how my physical appearance.
Okay, why were you disgusted with yourself? Why should you be disgusted with yourself?
I don't know. I just thought. I think I was disgusted. I am disgusted, and I was disgusted with not just my appearance, not a vanity thing. It wasn't a weight thing. I definitely can recall it not being a weight thing when I was younger, even though I did go on to having eating disorders. I think I compared everybody to me. I thought everybody was better than me, not just better looking, but prettier than me, nicer than me, a nicer person than me, more intelligent than me.
Is that because you took what the world was saying and turned it in on yourself? Because of all these things that you hear. So, for instance, you know, as I say, when the child goes to school, they have separation anxiety. Then the biggest things that you learn when you come out of school is must, should, got to, have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a prison. You have to be there on time. If you're not there on time, you're going to get told off, or passive aggressively. The teacher might say to the child, "Why are you late?" And it's got nothing to do with the child. It might be because the parent's running late or they have other children. But ultimately, so you're still in the prison when you're an adult. And the teachers behave like prison guards because they say, this is what time you're going to get here. Regardless of whether the bus changes or whatever goes on in your life, this is what we want. So that's, there you go, in the first prison. And then the second part of it is when you don't get 10 out of 10 and you add these things like, you could do better. Who are you going to do better for? You need to do better for us. So you turned all that in, and then the biggest things that you're going to leave school with, majority of people leave school with, is a program of must, should, have to, got to, but what have you used from school? Other than learning these things, when I see people, they might tell me about a very bad experience at school, or majority of them do, or a very good experience at school, but no one tells me about the maths and English, or what they learn. No one tells me about that. It doesn't come out of what drops out at the end. When you come off that conveyor belt, what drops out of the end? It's like you don't need all those years to learn maths and English. The child is a genius when it's born. It can learn all about its parents. It can learn many languages if you were to teach the child at that age. And yet the world is set up for us to go into this factory learning machine to be able to drop off the end into work. And then we never get time for ourselves. So within that, what you learn, you didn't learn anything about you. You learn about the planet that you've been dropped on, and you turned in on yourself because the planet was telling you, or you were hearing all these things. And one of them was self-love, in that everybody's better than you, that you'd interpreted from the world.
Yeah, I've got a lot of...
But some of those, sorry darling, some of those messages of that turning in came from your mum, from what you've said before.
Yeah.
Or from when you were in hospital, of I pity your parents for having a daughter like you when you were ill. So all these messages reinforced you turning in to this person who self-loves.
Yeah, and there were confusing messages as well. There were and very contradictory messages because I was different in different environments. So at home, I was quite vocal in expressing my view. I had to have stuff a certain way. I wanted stuff a certain way. I didn't want to do certain things. following the abuse that I experienced outside the home, it made me fearful of things outside the home. So I was all right in the house, behind the sofa playing. Growing up, it was like when somebody came to the door or the telephone rang, I couldn't deal with it. Or
What
if
happened?
it was just, I didn't know who it was going to be. I didn't know what they was going to want. So I'd like hide in the cupboard.
So they wanted something from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, even if we were going down the street, I'd be walking and with my, like, say, going out with my mum and my grandma, and they'd bump into somebody they know, I'd just walk off. So I were told that I were rude, and that I were awkward because I wanted stuff a certain way. I had to have my hair in a certain way, and if it wasn't even, that must have been the start of like OCD type thing. I had to have things in a certain way, like
so they
my
had to be
pigtail.
right for society before you could go out.
Yeah,
Do you think? Sorry, darling.
I was really. Ooh.
I keep interjecting because I want to capture these little bits that you're saying. You know, within that, so it sounded like it come to a point for you where you were behind the sofa and you felt safe behind the sofa. That when somebody came to the door, it was, you know, a sense of nervousness that somebody's going to come and want something, even though they might not have knocked on the door for you, but they're going to come and want something that you're unable to give because society or the people that you've experienced has already taken a lot.
Yeah, and it's not knowing what they want.
So that feeling of I won't be able to give them what they want, or I don't want to give them what I'm fearful.
More that I will do as I'm told, and I don't
want to do that because I've already done it.
Yeah,
I've already been overexposed. Somebody's already taken a lot from me by suffering rape from 5 years old. So it's those things that, you know, you've turned in on yourself, of that expectation of society and what society wants, and you not being able to do that, being able to fulfill it because you're already been, you know, not even figuring out what you are as a human being, but then you become like turned into a robot or human, doing and giving everybody things, and that can become too much for, you know, for themselves anyway, for society itself. So when you're doing that, you're looking at other people as if, well, they're managing it.
Yeah.
So I'm defective.
Yeah.
Because I can't. So lots of people everybody's looking at each other, or not everybody, but the majority of people are looking at each other saying they're managing to do it. Why can't I? And they might have even heard that as well growing up. They might have heard that along the way. Well, she can manage to do it, so why can't you?
They were like people my own age or even older or younger going to brownies, Sunday school, this club, that club. I wanted to sit behind the sofa and just be left alone. And so I felt different. Why can they do it and I can't do it? There's something wrong with me. And
it wasn't okay, you felt, even though you wanted to just be left alone. Majority of people just want to be left alone, you know, because they've had enough. So, but you felt it wasn't okay to sit behind the sofa and be left alone, because at any point when somebody knocks on the door, it sets you off again. Okay.
And so the messages that I were getting, like at home, or I were rude and I were awkward, or I wanted things my own way, and those kind of things, and that it were classed as being naughty. Then by my mum.
So I'm going to interject again, because you said I wanted things my own way.
That's what I was told.
You wasn't allowed to have things your way. You had to have things everybody else's way. So you were told that you were naughty, which is a paradox. You're told that you're naughty because you want things your way by somebody who wants things their way.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And then you would have got that message as well from more than being at home. When you go out into the world, you go to school, everybody, you know, the adults want things their way. And if you don't do things their way, you're told you're naughty as well, because you can't have things your way.
And this is where the confusion came in, because from my mum I was seen as naughty, wanting my own way, awkward, rude, that kind of thing. And I did want and try and do everything my mum wanted me to do and that kind of thing. But my dad, on the other hand, he just accepted everything and was quite passive, and had just put, when I was doing something which was classed as naughty or wrong or whatever, he'd just say she can't help it. So again, although he wasn't criticising me or chastising me, which he could have done, by just saying she can't help it made me think, yeah, it is something wrong with me, because I didn't know.
Yeah. So neither the, I mean, that's it might seem like a general way, but it's to be passive, it is almost can't be bothered to explain why you can't help it. So we'll just accept it and we won't do anything.
Yeah.
And then, so both parents are doing their thing really. And you're here on this planet having to deal with their thing, and so never discovering yours. And that's what they had to do as well. They had to work things out for themselves because of their parents.
And then at school, and that progressed to college and university, I was the complete opposite. I was invisible. Rules stuck to them like glue. I'd been at high school for about 5 years, and one of the teachers asked if I was new.
So then you were still behind the sofa, almost being invisible. Yeah, metaphorically speaking, you were behind the sofa, and then I guess as well the teacher asking if you were new. Again, not really recognising you as a human being and being there.
Like I say, I liked the rules. I followed the rules to the letter, screaming abdabs every morning about going, I don't want to go, because it was out of the house and my safety, safer. Screaming. Sunday nights were horrendous. All I'd do is cry and scream, I don't want to go. Primary school, I had to be dragged there. High school, I still went because that was the right thing to do, even though I hated it.
Just that in itself, isn't that, like you said, I had to be dragged there.
I can really remember and visualise the teachers dragging me off my mum because I was clinging to my mum.
Wow.
And they telling her to go away and leave me.
So even though you had many experiences of separation anxiety, it's just pure cruelty, isn't it, to see a child saying, I don't want to go somewhere, and not listening to, there's a reason why that child don't want to go there, but we rarely respect the child, and it becomes all about the adults. It's like children, they get introduced to all kinds of objects when they come on the planet, don't they? And they say, oh, that's a favourite toy. Well, it's not. It's because you introduced it to her. Or they always want that. Well, they don't. It's because you introduced it to them. But then they get blamed. Do you see what I mean? So they treat like these objects like we do with animals. So, we've normalised wanting pets. We've normalised taking... We'll just take that away from its family because we don't really see that, do we? We'll just take it away, whether it be a dog, a cat, or, a snake, a wild animal, whatever we want to do. I want that one. And I don't care about where it comes from, about taking it away from its family. I want it because my ego wants, and I just don't care that I'm going to imprison it. I'm going to take it away from its natural environment, and I'm going to imprison it, and that's what I'm going to do. So we tend to do, as I've said on the videos, normalise imprisonment because we don't recognise our own. We tend to do, the things that we learned or the things that we're doing ourselves, but we might not recognise, those things that's happening within our own environment. But yet we are controlled. We're forced to go to school. We're told that as you were forced, literally.
Yeah, and I can remember as a teenager when I became more expressive with not wanting to go to school, not liking it, and having more screaming sessions, and even over the summer holidays, that the anxiety and the build up to going back to school was quite horrendous in me acting out and me being upset and not wanting to go and crying and screaming and stuff.
And if it was a job, if you, when you're an adult and it's a job and you have stress, and it's like, oh, just be less stressed. It's like, how can you be less stressed if human beings have orchestrated us to be stressed so we can be controlled? So how can you be less stressed? But when you're stressed, you can be off and get a sick note and, oh, she's off with stress. But when you're at school, nobody really cares about your stress. I'm not saying not everybody, but unless you're performing bad or your grades have dropped, that can be recognised then when your grades have dropped, when you're not, kind of making us look good or, doing what you need to be doing because you're here, then we might sit up and take notice, but your grades are fine, so that you're probably okay. And it's that learning that you're just not as important as what somebody said that society needs to be. But we are society, so it's each individual to say, I'm important. And why are we doing, we don't, it just is like that. It's just, when I was growing up, it's because it is like that. It's like, but why? Why are we doing it?
And there were no two-way conversation between school and home. Like, I was like that at home, but at school I was so compliant and but there was no, well, she's like that. School telling my mum what I was like at school and my mum telling school what I was like at home. It was just two separate entities.
Because, it's like you say again, it's safety. With some people, like at home, you felt safe enough or comfortable enough to let out what you were trying to let out what you were feeling, even though it often went unheard. With some people, we can let it out, and then with others, we don't. We just comply because we fear that. I mean, why would you express to a teacher how you're feeling? Do you see what I mean? If the teacher has said, leave her, when you're already expressing at that point, when you're with your mum, I don't want to be there. Do you see what I mean? So it seems pointless, doesn't it? It's like when, often when people have been abused or, or raped, then it's pointless saying no because you're just not going to be heard. It's about what that person wants. So it seems eventually you give up saying no because you're powerless. It's pointless, and that sounds like the same for school. It's like I can scream when I'm with my mum, but it's pointless me saying something. It's pointless because nobody's already. People can see that I'm stressed, and I'm upset, and I'm anxious, and you're having to drag me there, and no one's listening.
Yeah, and I think you're right, I think it got to a point where
it's normalising that form of abuse as well.
Yeah.
Well, everybody does it. We do this with children, so we've normalised it, but does it make it less abusive? Because if somebody else was dragging you into a building, dragging you into there, then we'd say, oh, this bit, you see, when we have these paradoxical rules or laws, well, we have this bit, if somebody does that, it's against the law. And yet, for this, we say, well, we can drag her to school and you can leave her and then I'll drag her inside and she's made to stay there. What would you call that? If somebody, you'd say they'd been kidnapped, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Or they'd been forced something against the will. And yet we normalise this for children all the time.
And I think one of the things that you've just said is like that. Oh, never thought of it like that. That I got to the point where there was no point in expressing my feelings anymore. By the end of high school, college, then uni, even into the working environment, even into my relationship with the NHS and my hospital admissions and stuff like that, it was like, it's pointless saying anymore. Like, I was never sectioned. Everything I did was informal. Go on, pack a bag. There's a bed waiting for you in St James's. Oh, all right then. This is the regime. You can't do that. You can't do this. If you do this, you'll get this sanction. Oh, all right then.
And that's why you agreed when the nurse said, I pity parents like you,
Yeah.
and you said, I
Yeah,
do too.
I said I do too.
Because by that time you'd accepted that you were the problem, and then this self-loathing grew even further into you know, not being able to overturn what they were saying. So as as you've been in therapy, why is this person in therapy for a long time? And it's like, because of a lifetimes of untangling these beliefs that you have, but you now self-loathe because there's some form of benefit to self-loathing, because it can be, sometimes for people it can be really hard to have a hard exterior and to not let something in. But if you give them a hug, they'll say, don't touch me, because the fear of being humanized, can be very painful. And this other pain, I can deal with this other pain. Some people don't hug each other, they'll like just punch them on the shoulder and go, yeah, you're all right, but don't hug me. Because if you do, I'll start crying and I won't know when to stop. I don't think I'd be able to stop. So now I can have this exterior, this wall built against myself, but don't humanize me now, because I might not be able to cope with that.
I really get that, what you're saying. And what's flashing in my mind is, I don't know if it was a conversation we had on another video or in therapy, the only time when I have felt that affection unconditionally, because how I interpret it from my mum and dad, it was like, we love you, but when you behave, when you're not acting out, when you, like I can remember my mum saying, you should be grateful that we wanted children, nobody else would have put up with you, saying about my bad behaviour and that kind of thing, which made me think, I'm not acceptable, I've got to be a certain way to be accepted by things or people, and I've sort of like lived that throughout my life and my working life and that kind of thing. But the only opposite that I felt and that I couldn't cope with, like you said about touching, it's not about touching, is the dog. The unconditional positive regard to the dog, whether I was in it screaming, in a bad mood, whatever, it would come to me and I could not cope with that. I found that so overwhelming, and no matter how much I shouted at the dog to leave me alone, it would come and bring me a toy. And as a young person, I could not, even up into my teens, I couldn't deal with it.
Because it
was just somebody, it was just somebody wanting me, no matter how I behave. And it was like, I can't deal with this.
Does that's quite profound what you've just said, because when you look in an animal who we imprison shows us more empathy than human beings. What does that say to you about, isn't it looking and asking why, why is that? Isn't it something then that we're doing wrong by, doing what we're doing to our children? Because children aren't bad. They're reacting to us. They're not bad. It's an, action and reaction. And that's what we, and it's that. So, isn't it at some point for the human being to have a look and see, are we really doing something right? If what we're doing we're listening to authority figures and we're listening to people with labels, if what we're doing is correct, then why are we getting sicker? Are we doing something massively wrong?
And I know this might sound really weird or pathetic or silly.
I'm sure it won't.
But I'm learning a lot about attachments and that kind of thing from Supervet, the Noel Fitzpatrick, the professor who is a vet, about that compassion empathy, unconditional positive regard.
Yes.
And it's like I'm learning so much, and I've inherited a dog now from my mum because she can't look after him anymore. And it's like I'm learning to try and accept that that positiveness or that acknowledgement from me that it is unconditional. It is, obviously I've not hurt him or might have shouted at him, but when I'm like not playing with him or something, he just won't, oh, I don't like you anymore. He's still himself, and it's a really, really weird experience, to be fair.
So for you, when we go back to the self-loathing, what is the benefit of you self-loathing?
I've never thought of this before. This is new, so I don't know whether it's right or whether it's just coming. It's just that it fits in with all I've known.
So
it fits in with how the world's treated me, how people in the world have treated me, and how I've fitted in the world. It fits.
Do you believe that, for you, that for anyone really, just because you were born into a world that told you all these negative things, doesn't mean once you know that you have to live the rest of your life with it? Wouldn't you say, you know what, that's your house, that's your brain, and those are your emotions? Isn't it time that you owned them and you decided something different? Said, I'm going to let go of what everybody taught me, because they were taught false as well. And it's all a lie. So I'm going to take charge of my world. And because this is my house, and this is my brain, and this is a planet not given to us by human beings. It wasn't given to us by human beings. It was given to us by something else, because we can't make a human being. We can't make anything on this planet that wasn't already here when we arrived. And we cannot make a human being, as far as I know, without the tools that's been given to us first. Something gave us the tools. I don't know anyone that can make a blade of grass or a leaf. I don't know anyone that can do that. And I don't know if you know anyone that can do that. But isn't it time we then listen to ourselves? Not the chattering voice from someone else, but really felt something inside of ourselves. We don't keep ourselves breathing. We don't do that. We'd have to think all the time, breathe, 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 breathe. Do you see what? Which might be a good thing, really, because we won't be thinking all the other rubbish stuff that we're thinking. But ultimately, this keeps us going. Regardless of the way that you treat it, it loves you so much, it keeps you going. And yet, we're constantly harming it. Shouldn't we, instead of harming it, be in harmony with it? So what would be wrong with not despising yourself? What would you lose if you didn't despise yourself? If you didn't hurt yourself? If you didn't have an eating disorder? If you didn't have OCD? If you didn't self-harm with all the negative thoughts? What would you lose?
A lot of pain and negative